Pick your season or occupation. It's time to send in your application. Get to know your short-term friends you only talk to till summer ends.
Apartment hunting in New York City is basically like the Hunger Games. In a typical year, approximately 300,000 people aim to move to New York City, which has about 3.7 million housing units across 3.5 million buildings. This one video will have everything you need to know to find the perfect place in New York City for you and to never ever get screwed over. Trust me, this one's coming from someone who has gone through this process one too many times. So some may say I may be just an expert, but not by choice. Hello friends of the internet. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Kathy and I am yet another 26-year-old living in what some of y'all may call the Big Apple, aka one of the most expensive cities to live in the world. I'm also a corporate girly and a competitive athlete, and you can also find more of my New York City life shit on Instagram because I also kind of work to exist there for you guys. I recently moved again, and you guys probably already know that if you follow my channel and have watched my ultimate New York City apartment unmakeover, ultimate moving guide. Link in the description down below or somewhere above in this imaginary space if you want packing tips, moving tips, repairing your apartment tips, all that fun stuff. There'll be 4 key chapters to this video. 1, searching. 2, touring. 3, applying. And 4, signing. So you know exactly what you're getting into before you sign your life away to your landlord. Let's jump right in because the New York City housing market waits for nobody. Searching. Let's start with platforms. Where do you even start? This is also overwhelming. Breathe. I got you. We can talk about it. For the New York City area, there's a couple of online listing websites, and the main ones are StreetEasy and Zillow. Probably just stick to one. Personally, for me, I've always used StreetEasy. I tried using Zillow before, but what I have realized is all of these buildings cross-list on both of these platforms. So if I did a clean comb with StreetEasy, it's very unlikely that I will find something different on Zillow. I will most likely find the same available buildings and units. Platforms are pretty intuitive, very easy to use. You can put in your neighborhood, your price range, select fees or no fees, which I will talk about in a second. So let's talk rent and pricing. How much should I budget for my apartment if I were to move to New York City? Good rule of thumb is you want to take your pre-tax income, so your gross income, and divide that by 40. And the reason why you do that is because that should be the maximum of what you can afford. New York City, there is a 40x income rule that most places follow. It's not super strict, but it's there. That means if you don't make 40 times your monthly rent, you will not be able to get approved for that apartment. Of course, your budget for an apartment varies upon many different things, your financial goals, your budget, how much you may have in your savings. All those factors matter and they're very personal. I have created a free Ultimate New York City apartment hunting spreadsheet for you guys, or tool that you can use below. It has a free rent budgeting calculator that you can use, as well as a whole spreadsheet that you can use to track all the units you told. I'll leave it in the description down below, completely free to download. Just hit me up with, one of those like, comment, and subscribe to, help me out for making free shit. That would be appreciated. I just talked about kind of like the self-search option. There's another thing that I feel like is like this mystery black box of the broker option. Like, what is even a broker? Like, this was also confusing to me when I first came to New York City as like a new grad. Brokers are essentially people that bring together people looking for apartments and apartment buildings. Historically, they sometimes charge insane amounts of fees. I've always found an apartment by myself, and I honestly don't think it's that hard. So fun fact that you must know, broker fees are actually now illegal in New York City. As of June 14, 2005, it's like I had a friend who moved last year and she used a broker and they didn't charge them any fees, and she said it was pretty helpful. So you could honestly go with that option if there is someone you trust. All right, let's talk the different types of rent. There's gross rent and there's net effective rent. Okay, what in the world does that mean? Gross rent is the exact rent that you will be paying, that will be coming out of your bank every single month. That's going to be what you pay. Where does net effective come in? Net effective only comes in if your building is giving you some sort of discount. And the form that discount almost always comes in is like a certain time period in your lease free. Some buildings do 1 month free, a half month free. In crazy COVID times, I got 3 months free, which is insane. So your net effective rent is basically your gross rent minus that amount of discount that you save from that 1 month free divided by 12. So let's just say, for simple math terms, and because I was always one of those Asians that was never actually good at math, let's keep things simple. Let's just pretend we're living in Delululand for a second and your rent in New York City is $1,200. Let's say this building is giving you 1 month free. Take that 1,200 number divided by 12 and you get $100. $100 is quote unquote your discount. Net effective marketed rent is 1.1K. I do want you to be mindful and cautious if liquidity is an issue for you. How it works is not that you're paying 1.1K every single month. You actually just get the first month free, and then for the rest of your lease term, you will still have to pay 1.2K in full. I know I'm using low numbers here, but if your rent is a lot higher than that, it can actually make a significant difference between what you think you're paying, which is the net effective, versus the gross. So you always want to make sure that whenever you budget for an apartment, you always have enough monthly liquidity to pay the gross rent, not the net effective rent. Next big thing I want to talk about is rent stabilized versus rent controlled. I feel like that's another one of these terms that people get confused on all the time. As you guys know, if you follow along my other videos and are a avid member of this community on this little corner of the internet, you may know that my first building I moved into in New York City in 2020 was actually a rent stabilized building. And whenever someone hears, oh my God, you live in a rent stabilized building, like your rent must never go up. That's freaking awesome. Well, it's kind of not like that. If you think that's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. When you live in a rent stabilized building, your rent increase year to year has a specific cap on it. For example, in 2024, the rent increase cap was 2.24%. The market skyrockets, you won't experience as drastic of an increase in your rent, which is a very positive thing. And in this case, you as a tenant have a right to a lease renewal. So a building can't just be like, we're gonna kick you out, we're not going to offer you a renewal. So rent stabilized doesn't mean your rent is the same thing forever. It just means it goes up less than the average market unit. The second thing is a rent controlled apartment. And rent controlled is a dying thing in New York City. I think there's only 15,000 units left in all of New York City that still is quote unquote rent controlled. These apartments mean the tenant or their family has been essentially living there continuously since before July 1st, 1974. And that is way before the times of even my existence. And the base rent is probably already ridiculously low. But trust me, if you're hunting apartments in this day and age, you're not gonna find a rent controlled apartment. Sticking on the topic of rent, I also want to talk about timing. When is the best time to move? The market typically peaks in June to August. And confirm that because every time I've ever hunted apartments in this time range, the leasing agents are like stressed out of their minds. And off season is technically the best time to move. You will kind of be looking at September to October to March/April. That's usually when the least amount of people want to move to New York City because it is when it's kind of depressing and gloomy and rainy and gross and disgusting. New York City winters aren't the most appealing things in the world. If your moving time is flexible, I would highly encourage you to think about that. Other things you can work around this is if you need to stretch yourself a couple of months over the peak period, think about subletting. I feel like a lot of New Yorkers go on vacation, they sublet their apartments. That could be a way to save money because another thing I want you to think about is your lease term. So if you start a typical 12-month lease into off season, you will end into off season. But I see some people get into a perpetual cycle. If their lease term ends and starts always in the peak season, they will continue to just pay ridiculous amounts of rent. I will also be cautious about lease terms that are like 18 months because if you start off in the off season, you might actually end up in the peak season. So just be wary of timing. Okay, chapter 2, touring. What questions do I need to ask? Number 1, inquire about amenities fees or honestly any other fees outside of your monthly gross rent that your apartment building or landlord may tack on. I would also ask if there is a fee, if it is mandatory, or optional, because some places may have like a pool or a really nice gym or outdoor space, but you don't have to pay for it if you don't want to. You just won't be able to access it. However, there are some buildings that make you pay an amenities fee. So even if you are someone who never wants to ever work out and touch the gym, you will still have to pay for the gym. So typical amenities fees you may see are things like the gym or the lounge or rooftop access. Guys, I literally inquired on a building when I was recently looking to move that charged a technology fee for having those fancy electronic locks. That is just freaking insane. Another interesting thing that I've seen is a upfront versus monthly amenities fee payment. So there's some weird places that I've toured where they were like, in order to use the gym, you must pay the $1,000 annual fee upfront, which is kind of weird because typically speaking, I would say the best options, if you do have amenities fee in your building, obviously the best option is to have no amenities fees. But usually the better option is to do a monthly additional payment. Generally speaking, amenities fees should range anywhere from $20 on the low end up to probably $150 in some crazy luxury buildings if you want to go that far. Next big thing to ask is utilities. And utilities is how I've seen some people get screwed over and over and over. It is one of those fees that you can't really approximate until you live there. A lot of buildings are also very dodgy about this. I would ask, oh, how much on average is like utilities for someone living alone in this studio unit or whatever? And they would just not give you an answer. So always ask what is covered by you and what is covered by the building. So typically in New York City, it's very common to have electricity and Wi-Fi be covered by the tenant, which is you. So I wouldn't be surprised if a building tells you that electricity is not covered and Wi-Fi is not covered. When it comes to Wi-Fi, you do want to ask your building which providers they take, because depending on the building you have, some might be set up to be compatible with various different Wi-Fi providers. Some buildings will be like, oh, we only offer Verizon and Spectrum. From least expensive to most expensive, this is how Wi-Fi companies look. So if you are in a building that only is compatible with Verizon Fios, for example, just take that into consideration. It's probably not something that will make or break the bank for you, but just food for thought. Now let's talk about what typically should be covered by the building. Gas is usually covered by the building, but some buildings are very tricky about this. They will say specifically that cooking gas is included. So that means every time you use the stove or the oven or whatever, that is covered. However, you want to ask where else in the building is gas used for. Some buildings, they might be like, oh, gas is also used to power heating in the winter, and you actually have to cover that heating part by yourself if any gas is involved. I am not a utilities girly, so can't really explain to you the logistics behind how all of this shit works, but just be mindful. Water should typically be covered, but some buildings can still charge for it. The current building I am in actually does charge for water. I used to actually think that it is illegal to charge for water. If you are in a building that does not cover water, maybe rethink that twice and don't be like me. Some buildings do charge a trash collection fee as well, which is kind of wild. I'm just telling you this because my building has a trash fee and I personally think that's freaking insane. So once again, don't be like me. And kind of along the same string of things, I always want to ask if laundry is either in unit, on the floor, or in the building. And if it is not in a unit, I always want to ask how much the cost is, because some places will charge you ridiculous amounts of money for one site. Sometimes if you have in unit, of course you have to pay for the electricity to run your washer and dryer, but you also kind of don't want to be paying like $5 per cycle. The prices for laundry range from like $2.75 to $3. Other critical things that you want to ask for. One is window direction. Personally, for me, this is a huge one when it comes to apartment searching. The direction of your windows in your unit can actually significantly affect your mood, your happiness, and the amount of natural light you get in a given day. On a general spectrum of popular opinion, south-facing windows are the best for a couple of reasons. So south-facing windows have natural light throughout all of the hours of the day. The one con of south-facing windows is that it may get pretty hot, especially in the summers. So if you do have south-facing windows, try not to set up something too close to the window like a desk or something when you will just have the sun beaming down on you. For me, I'm a south facing window girly. That is one of my deal breakers when I hunt for an apartment because I just cannot deal with having not enough natural light, especially in the winter when seasonal depression gets pretty bad. West facing windows, I also do like. My old apartment had some west facing windows. West facing windows are beautiful for a gorgeous sunset because the sun sets in the west for obvious reasons, and you get a beautiful golden hour. But I will say, because of that, the lighting around sunset is very, very harsh, and it can get very, very warm in the summer months during the sunset hours. The one con is that there is a little bit less natural light during the day. So if you think about it this way, you kind of get less kind of bright light in the morning and get more direct bright light in the afternoon. East facing windows is the exact opposite of that. You get beautiful golden hour in the morning, so beautiful sunrise, direct sun to wake you right up. But the con is that it may get darker and darker earlier as the day goes on. And then we have north facing, the neglected child, the unwanted one. I am truly not a big fan of north facing apartments. North facing apartments get no direct sunlight throughout the entire day. So you're just kind of in, I guess, a depression bubble. But that's just my personal opinion. You still get light, don't get me wrong. It's just more cool tone and it stays kind of even throughout the day. So you almost never really get like any golden hour moments in your unit, if that makes any sense. Other things you want to ask: how much is your security deposit? Which I will talk about in a bit more detail later in chapter 4 if you continue watching, about how to not get screwed over in this department. You want to ask when is the earliest and latest move-in date. You want to ask the lease term. You want to look into proximity to the subway or other modes of transportation. You want to ask about flex wall allowances. If you are looking to move in with a roommate and you're looking to flex a 1-bed apartment or something like that, some buildings will allow you to do it, others will not, and depending on how the building layout or the unit layout is set up, due to like fire laws or whatever, sometimes you can put a wall and sometimes you cannot. Always ask if you can do a flex wall before you move into a building that won't let you do a flex situation. In a lot of flex situations, the living area ends up being really small and the kitchen usually will not have any natural light, because usually what happens is the living room gets segmented off into one of the bedrooms. So just be mindful, if you flex a 1-bedroom in New York, most likely your kitchen or living area will not have any natural light. Then I always try to ask for a virtual tour, whether it is a video or one of those 3D interactive clicky thingies that are honestly really kind of annoying sometimes. Because sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I'm on like Street Easy and I see these apartments list pictures that are clearly not pictures of the unit that I am looking at. Like, it is actually insane how these buildings try to lure you in. I'm literally looking for a shoebox studio that I can afford, and what I end up getting pictures of in the listing is like their penthouse unit that has floor to ceiling windows across the entire spectrum of walls. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I'm renting for the budgeted amount that I have. You really think that you're gonna trick me into thinking I'm gonna get a penthouse in New York City for $3,000. Lastly, always ask to set up an in-person tour. If you can tour your unit specifically that you are looking to move into, always see it in person, because the feel and look of every space is gonna be so different once you're actually in it. Do know that in most places, if a unit is currently occupied, you may not be able to actually see it, because it depends on if the people who are staying in it wants to show it or not. People are crazy. Things fly off of the New York City housing market so fast. I've been in countless situations where I wanted to tour a unit that is currently occupied, and there are some crazies out there who literally just signed a lease without even looking and seeing the apartment. Always double check before you show up to a tour. Like, I will call the leasing office and I'm like, hey, we scheduled this appointment on Thursday at 1 p.m., but is this unit still available? And I'm so glad I did that, because in countless situations, there were times where the building was like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, actually this unit got taken off the market. And because they don't give a shit about you, they don't call you and they don't let you know. So don't waste your time. If you have a unit you really like, schedule a tour of that shit immediately. And I wouldn't go through Street Easy for that. Usually in the Street Easy listing, you'll have the building's phone number. I will call them get to the leasing office and ask them directly to set up an appointment with you, because using StreetEasy and Zillow is great for your initial search, but it's kind of not great for communicating with the apartment themselves, because StreetEasy and Zillow, they're like a third-party intermediary. Any messages they get from you when you click on schedule a tour or ask a question, it gets directed through them through StreetEasy, and sometimes it doesn't automatically hit their pure leasing office inbox. And usually from my experience, it takes them longer to reply to that. So the most efficient way, I sometimes just give them a call and be like, hey, can I come see this apartment today? And the best part about that is if you do like the building, usually calling them directly, you can actually get a deeper inventory of what may actually be available. Be mindful of the time of day that you schedule your tour and the weather that day. If you tour an apartment on a rainy day or overcast day, it's really hard to see what the natural light dynamics actually look like. Tricks that leasing offices will do, if you're looking at like an east-facing unit, they might give you showings in the morning when the light is beautiful and raining down into the apartment, but what you don't see is that sometimes, especially in the winter, by 3 p.m., like the light is gone. All right, chapter 3, let's talk about applying and what you need to prepare. The next couple of things that I list off, prepare that shit in advance, because again, the New York housing market goes so damn fast. You do not want to be scrambling and collecting all of these documents and forms you need to submit when you actually find an apartment you love, because by the time you get your documents together, someone else may have already taken that unit off the market. Typically, this is what New York City apartments will ask for. You'll usually fill out a standard application that has all of your information, your social security number, all that fun shit, so they can do kind of a background check on you. And then you'll also need to show proof of income. So like I said before, usually the threshold in New York City that most places use is the 40x rule, which means your pre-tax income needs to be, once again, 40 times the amount of your monthly gross rent. So if you're in a specific situation where your income does not meet that threshold, you can also have what is called a guarantor. So a guarantor could be anyone like a parent or partner or family members or whatnot, but they need to have about 80 times to 100 times the monthly income of your gross rent. They will essentially co-sign the lease with you, and if you go down, they go down with you. Okay, it's not that dramatic, but you know what I mean. Proof of income usually comes in the form of submitting your 2 most recent pay stubs from wherever you work. And if you're a new grad, relax, do not freak out. You may be like, I don't make an income yet, I don't have pay stubs. You can submit an offer letter, but once again, just make sure you ask for those things in advance if you don't already have it handy. Some places require an official proof of income verification and the verification of your position, as well as your length of employment at your current company. So depending on where you work at, I would give HR a ring. You also want to have your ID to include your last 2 to 3 bank statements. If you already know that your income is slightly below the 40x threshold, some things that most places actually also do take is additional forms or proof of other income. So maybe you're a freelancer and you do photography on the side. So if you have any proof of clients paying you extra money or other income streams from a side hustle, you can actually also include that for consideration. Have any sort of savings accounts, that's actually very, very helpful to get yourself approved as well, because that shows proof of liquidity that you are able to actually afford the apartment. Also, if you're an international resident or international student, always just be prepared to have your immigration documents, visas, passports, all that fun shit ready to go as well. All right, fees. Let's talk application fees. Most apartments in New York charge a $20 application fee for you to apply and for them to take the unit off the market. So as soon as you apply and put in that $20, that unit no longer becomes available for the next typically 48 hours. When a building goes through the process of checking your credit, checking your background, checking your income. One trap to make sure you don't fall into here is that there are some places who charge like a good faith fee or something, and sometimes it's like a crazy amount of money. I had a apartment that I toured that literally said if I applied, got approved, and I didn't move forward with the apartment, they will charge me like a half a month of rent. So essentially, once you apply, you can't really walk away with it without any consequences. I would typically avoid a building that would do something like that, because I just feel like it's very shady. Another thing you want to prepare for in advance is making sure you have a good credit score leading up to the period of time that you might be apartment hunting. A couple things that may drop your credit score are things such as opening new credit cards. I know that especially within the demographics of young New York City residents who make a decent sum of money, people love turning credit cards. It's fun, you get points, rewards from travel, you open a credit card, oh my god, free vacation. Do that after you signed your lease and get approval for an apartment, because whenever you open up a new credit card, you get a pull on your credit score, and every time your credit score gets pulled, it drops slightly. How the hell do I check my credit score? Usually, whatever bank you're with should have like a online portal thingy that you can just go and check your score. Obviously, the higher the better, but I would say generally aim for 700 plus, especially if your income is at the threshold or slightly below the threshold, because a good credit score can help pull your application through. I would say you'll probably be safe with 650 plus if your income is like significantly higher than the 40x threshold. 3 to 6 months before your move, just be very, very cognizant of making sure you don't miss any payments or make any late payments. Set up recurring payment systems with your banks. There's been times in the past where like you accidentally forget to pay off like one random credit card that you barely use or something. All right, we have reached a final chapter, and that is signing. Congratulations, you got approved for your first New York City apartment. Now what? Well, let me tell you certain things to look out for. Make sure you do not get screwed over legally.
A friendly reminder and disclaimer that I am a business girly with a business degree. I am in no way a lawyer or any practitioner of the law in the USA or anywhere in the world. So take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm just sharing my experiences from what I have seen.
First things first, in most places, once you get approved, they typically make you put down a deposit. That deposit most often just turns into your security deposit. So it is a sum of money that your building will hold onto for the duration of your lease term, and you will get that amount back in full given that you don't damage the apartment in some way. If you put any amount of decorations in any apartment, no matter how good you repair it, it will probably deduct a little bit from your security deposit. It typically ranges from $1,000 to a full month of rent. So under New York City law and regulation, 1 month of rent is actually the maximum amount a building can charge you for a security deposit. There are some places that provide you a little bit more flexibility. If you have a really good credit score, what I talked about before, of 700 plus, then you can be approved for a security deposit of only $1,000. So many things to check for when you review your lease. Actually read your damn lease because it's kind of important. You want to watch for any auto renewal clauses. You want to check if there's any sneaky rent increases upon renewal already built into your contract. Utilities that are covered, any amenities fees. You also want to confirm maintenance responsibilities. You want to make sure that all the maintenance of the apartment is not falling on you. Some places there might be shared ownership where some of the maintenance fees get passed back onto you. You don't want that. Some other things you might care about, you might want to confirm if you're allowed to sublease the apartment in any way. At the end of the day, read through your contract, consider all of these things, but honestly, in this day and age, put that shit into ChatGPT and just ask it, what are some red flags that I should be aware of? Might save me a lot of time. All right, friends, this should be everything and anything you will probably ever need to know about finding and hunting for an apartment in New York City. If I somehow missed something random, or if you have any specific questions for me, please feel free to leave it in the comment sections down below. I will try to reply to as many comments as possible. And by you leaving a question, it might also help other people who may have the same question. So feel free to comment away down below. Apartment hunting in New York City can definitely be very daunting, overwhelming, and confusing, especially if you're a new grad or someone looking to move to their first adult apartment ever. But all is good, all is well, we're all in this together. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like more videos like this. I make a lot of New York City content, New York City apartment lifestyle BS, so if you're into that, please support the channel. It really helps keep the lights on so I can continue to make more videos that will hopefully help you guys out. Oh, and once again, if you want the completely free New York City apartment hunting tool that I have built just for you guys, which features a tracking guide where you can write down notes for every single apartment you ever tour and all of its features, and also have a free budget calculator, peep that in the description down below. Completely free to download. Make sure you hit the notification bell because my new New York City apartment makeover and tour is coming soon to this channel next week, so stay tuned for that. It's probably a week or 2 weeks. I'm not sure yet. Depends on how long it takes to get it. All right, I'll leave you guys to it. Till next time, happy apartment hunting, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Bye!
I'm outside looking